Tonight, I found out my husband of 15 years was never born. The words on the screen stared back at me like a confession written in static. No match found. Again. I typed his name slower this time. Jonathan Cross, born March 3rd, 1979, St. Mary's Hospital, mother's maiden name Whitlock. Same result. My coffee had gone cold 2 hours ago, but I kept sipping it like a lifeline. This was the fourth database I'd tried tonight. Fourth? Who am I kidding? This was the 30th. The county clerk had gone home at 5, leaving me alone with the hum of machines and my growing certainty that I'd married a ghost. Jonathan was asleep at home, probably snoring on his back like always, one arm flung over my pillow. Or was he? My hand started shaking so badly I had to grip the mouse with both fists. We'd filed joint taxes for 15 years. 15. Our mortgage, our insurance, everything, all supposedly tied to his social security number. Every single form I'd ever filled out with his information now felt like a lie I'd been telling myself. The hospital database came up empty first. St. Mary's had no record of any Jonathan Cross born that day, that year, that decade. Try spelling it differently, I muttered, but I knew how to spell my own husband's name. The school records were next to crumble. No Jonathan Cross in any district database, not even as a transfer student. I laughed then, actually laughed out loud in the silent office. What kind of man doesn't exist in kindergarten? The passport office had never heard of him either. No applications, no renewals, no emergency replacements. This wasn't identity theft. This was identity absence. I pulled up our joint tax returns from last year, the ones we'd filed together like always. His social security number, our social security number, brought up nothing. Not even a "this number belongs to a deceased person," just void. The deeper I dug, the more nothing I found. It was like someone had taken an eraser to the world and scrubbed Jonathan Cross from existence, except he was making dinner when I left. Spaghetti with that sauce his mother supposedly taught him. Mother. Right. I'd met her once at our wedding. Sweet woman, gray hair, cried through the whole ceremony. Except when I called information for Whitlock in the area where she supposedly lived. The operator had never heard of her either. My wedding ring suddenly felt heavy, like it was made of lead instead of gold. 15 years. Fights about whose family to visit at Christmas. Arguments about buying versus renting. The night our daughter was born, and he held her like she was made of glass. Our daughter. Oh God. I slammed the laptop shut so hard the screen cracked. The sound echoed in the empty office like a gunshot. I had to go home. Had to look him in the eye and ask, what? Ask my husband who he really was? Ask the man who'd shared my bed for 15 years why the government thought he'd never been born? My keys felt foreign in my hand as I walked to the parking lot. Every step felt like walking through quicksand. What if he wasn't there? What if I got home and the house was empty? Just another database with no match. I sat in my car for 20 minutes, engine off, staring at that cracked laptop in the passenger seat. The empty file wasn't just in the computer anymore. It was spreading. I pushed the front door open with the heel of my hand, keys still dangling, still cold from the night air. The scent of melted candle wax hit me first, thick and sweet like funeral parlors. Marcus was there, of course he was there, standing in the kitchen, backlit by 7 squat candles lined up on the counter like jury members. My heart pounded so loud, I swear the floorboards vibrated. I had rehearsed every accusation on the drive home, a courtroom monologue built from 15 years of tiny lies. But when I opened my mouth, only one word came out. Why? It cracked in the middle like cheap glass. Marcus didn't flinch. He just looked at me with that still water calm he wore whenever the credit card bill arrived. The same look he gave me the day I miscarried, and he told me, everything happens for a reason. He stepped away from the counter, palms open, and said, I was never born the way you understand it. The candles guttered at the same moment, as if even the air was offended. I laughed, or maybe sobbed. Same sound, different intention. What does that even mean? I moved closer, shoes clicking on the tile like a metronome. He didn't back away. Instead, he reached into the pocket of his gray cardigan and pulled out something the size of a credit card. Matte black, dull as a dead screen. The keycard pulsed. I heard it before I saw it. A low, rhythmic thrum, softer than a phone vibration, but steady, like a heart that had learned patience. Marcus set it on the table between us and slid it forward with one finger. The sigil caught the candlelight, a spiral inside a triangle, inside a circle, none of them touching. "Touch it," he said. His voice dropped to a whisper that felt colder than the room. I didn't want to. My hands stayed fists at my sides. "It's warm," I said. Because it was. Heat radiated an inch above the surface, enough to dry the sudden sweat on my palms. Marcus nodded once, slow. "That's me, Evelyn. That's all that's left of the me you married." He sounded almost proud, like a child showing off a macaroni necklace. The room narrowed around the table, walls tilting inward until the candle flames leaned with them. I took a step back and my heel caught on the rug. For a second, I thought I'd fall, but my spine hit the fridge handle and stayed there. "You're telling me you're some glitch?" Some program that walked into my life and ordered Thai takeout for 15 years. My voice cracked again, higher this time. "We renewed our vows under an oak tree, Marcus. We argued about the mortgage rate. The words tangled. He tilted his head, curious, not guilty. "Those memories are mine too. They just aren't anchored the way yours are." He tapped the key card once. The sigil brightened, silver becoming white, and for a heartbeat, the kitchen lit up like dawn. I felt my knees go soft. I grabbed the back of a chair for balance. "So what happens now? You evaporate? You reboot?" My sarcasm tasted like copper. Marcus smiled then, small and sad. "I was given a window. The window is closing." He glanced at the candles. 2 had already drowned in their own wax. "Tonight, actually." The hum from the card grew louder, almost musical. I could feel it in my teeth. I reached out without thinking, fingers brushing the surface. It was slick, warm, alive. A jolt shot up my arm, not pain, more like déjà vu wrapped in static. I yanked my hand back. "What did you just do to me?" My voice trembled. "Nothing yet," he said. "But if you keep holding on, the transfer completes." His eyes, still the same brown I'd memorized in college, reflected the sigil like twin mirrors. "Transfer of what?" I whispered, though I already knew. The empty file on my laptop hadn't been a mistake. It had been a space waiting to be filled with me. I backed toward the hallway, but the floor felt spongy, unreliable. "I loved you," I said, the words tasting like betrayal in my mouth. Marcus looked down at the card, then back at me. "Love was the interface, Evelyn, not the program." He lifted the card and held it between 2 fingers, offering it again. "One of us has to carry the other across." I couldn't breathe. The walls pulsed with the same rhythm as the card. My wedding ring felt suddenly heavy, like it was sinking through bone. "What happens if I refuse?" I asked, though my voice came out paper thin. Marcus didn't answer. Instead, he turned the key card over. On the back, etched in the same silver, was my name. Not Evelyn, my full birth name. The one I'd changed legally at 19 and never told him. The letters shimmered, rearranging themselves into a date. Tomorrow's date. He met my eyes one final time. "Then the house chooses for us," he said softly. The candles snuffed themselves in perfect unison, plunging the kitchen into pitch black except for the card's glow. I couldn't see him anymore, only the silver spiral turning, opening like a mouth ready to speak my name. The silver spiral kept turning in my palm even after the candles died, a tiny galaxy I couldn't switch off. I stumbled back through the dark kitchen, heart punching my ribs, whispering over and over, "Mason, answer me!" But the only reply was the echo of my own breathing. By the time I reached the hallway light switch, the card had finally dimmed to dull tin. I told myself it was just a trick of phosphor paint, maybe some boutique escape room prop. Yet the date, tomorrow, still glowed behind my eyelids every time I blinked. I spent the next 12 hours at the dining table, laptop open, coffee growing cold. The spiral looked familiar, so I fed it into every reverse image engine I could find. Nothing. Then I remembered the mythology elective I'd slept through in college and typed the name of the fate who measures the thread of life. Lachesis. The screen flickered, and one lone result surfaced. A scanned page from a defunct occult quarterly, dated 1994. The article claimed Lachesis wasn't a goddess, but an organization, older than governments, that could snip a person from every record, every memory, every photograph. I laughed out loud until the sound cracked and became a cough. People vanish, sure, but from the past itself? Still, the writer insisted that senators, CEOs, even a vanished pop star had paid fortunes to be unwritten. At the bottom of the page, a tiny forum link still worked. I clicked. The site was a ghost ship. 3 members online, all anonymous. No posts since 2008. I left a thread titled Seeking Verification of Spiral Mark and got one reply within minutes. The username was Clotho, naturally. The message read, Midnight, Central Library Freight Elevator. Bring nothing that beeps. I stared at the blinking cursor, palms slick. Part of me wanted to slam the lid and pretend tomorrow would be ordinary. But the other part, the part that married a man who could disappear, was already lacing my boots. I arrived 20 minutes early, hood up, city hushed except for the occasional siren. The library's granite steps were slick with evening rain. The freight elevator smelled of moldy cardboard and printer toner. I pressed B 4 times, as instructed, and it lurched downward past the official basement levels. When the doors slid apart, I expected a dusty archive. Instead, cool air and the low hum of servers greeted me. Fluorescent strips lit a narrow passage lined with rolling shelves of decommissioned books. At the far end, a single figure waited beneath a red exit sign, face hidden by a deep hood. The courier didn't speak. They simply extended a gloved hand holding a manila folder the color of dried blood. I took it, and the hooded figure melted back into the shadows as silently as they'd appeared. My pulse drummed in my ears louder than the servers. The folder felt too light, but the label on the tab made my stomach drop. Subject M. Cross. Black rectangle had been stamped, redacted, yet someone had scratched a tiny spiral beside it, fresh enough that the paper fibers were still raised. I slid my thumbnail under the clasp and lifted the flap. Inside lay one sheet, centered, single-spaced, in crisp courier font. Asset activated, 2008. Nothing else. No headers, no signature. I flipped it over, blank. The fluorescent lights buzzed louder, as if laughing at me. I pressed the paper to my nose, hoping for a scent of Mason cedar cologne, but smelled only ozone and old glue. A distant clatter echoed, shelves rolling shut. I spun, heart leaping, but the corridor was empty. My phone vibrated once, then died, despite a 90% charge. The exit sign began to strobe, red pulses washing the walls like arterial blood. Perfect. A horror movie cliché. I started toward the elevator, but the floor vibrated underfoot, machinery engaging somewhere deeper. The shelves slid sideways on hidden tracks, rearranging themselves into a maze that funneled me toward a dead end. At the barrier of encyclopedias, I noticed a book spine that didn't match the rest. Matte black, spiral embossed. I tugged it free. A hollowed-out compartment inside held a small copper key and a strip of micro-cassette tape labeled Evelyn. My own name in Mason's tidy engineer's print. No, no, no. How long had he planned this? I pocketed both, adrenaline making my fingertips tingle. Behind me, the shelves reversed with a hydraulic sigh, reopening the path. I ran. The freight elevator opened instantly, almost expectantly. I hammered the button for street level, clutching the folder like a shield. When the doors closed, I finally dared to breathe. The ascent was slow, each floor a heartbeat. Above the panel, a tiny speaker crackled to life. Not the usual ding, but Mason's voice, calm and measured. Don't trust the spiral, Evelyn. It's a compass, not a map. Then silence. The elevator spat me onto the sidewalk. Dawn was still hours away, yet the air felt charged, every neon sign too bright. I ducked into a 24-hour diner booth, ordered coffee I didn't taste, and unfolded the folder again. This time, under the single sentence, faint ultraviolet fibers glowed, forming another date, tonight. I pressed the microcassette into the recorder app on my phone, but static swallowed the first words. Then, clear as if Mason sat opposite, he whispered, "If you're hearing this, you chose the thread. Pull it gently, or the whole tapestry falls." The tape snapped, ribbon curling like smoke. I stared at the mess, chest hollow. Outside, sirens dopplered closer. Through the window, I saw two unmarked vans idling at the library steps, their headlights forming twin white eyes. My phone buzzed again, a single text from an unknown number. "Leave the cup, walk west." I looked down. My coffee had gone cold and left a perfect spiral in the foam. I stood so fast the folder fluttered to the floor. A busboy stooped, handed it back without meeting my eyes, and slipped something inside my palm, a subway token etched with the same spiral. Everyone's in on the joke except me. I dropped $5, abandoned the folder on the seat, and stepped into the night. Behind me, the diner lights cut out, every bulb at once, leaving only the red glow of the exit sign. I didn't look back. West meant the river, the old freight tracks, places couples used to carve promises into rust. My feet knew the way, even if my mind didn't. The token grew warm in my pocket, pulsing like a second heartbeat. I reached the riverbank where we once watched fireworks. Reeds rattled in the wind. I took out the copper key, held it to the moonlight, and noticed the teeth formed a perfect spiral. A distant train whistle answered my unspoken question. "The next lock is literal, isn't it, Mason?" And that's when I heard footsteps behind me, measured, unhurried, exactly in time with my own. The footsteps stopped when I stopped, and started again the instant I moved. I turned, copper key clenched so tight the metal burned, but the underpass behind me was empty, except for drifting mist. Then the silence shattered. My phone exploded into life at 3:12 a.m., one jagged ring that cut the night like a scalpel. I answered before the second ring, heart jackhammering, and heard nothing but a hiss of static so cold it felt like frost on my ear. A voice that wasn't human, more like broken glass rubbed against metal, scraped out 12 syllables, 40.79 north, 73.97 west. Then, even softer, "Trust no one, not even him." The line went dead, leaving only the taste of copper on my tongue. I stared at the glowing screen until it dimmed. Those numbers burned into my retinas like afterimages of a lightning strike. I knew those coordinates. Somewhere across the river, the old decommissioned ferry dock where Marcus once proposed with plastic champagne flutes. Why drag that ghost back now? I crept back through the apartment, every floorboard creak sounding like a confession. Marcus lay on his side of the bed, breathing slow and even, one arm flung across my pillow like he owned it. Clear his throat. I watched the rise and fall of his ribs, timing them with the second hand of the alarm clock. Too perfect, like a metronome. Had he been following me tonight? Or worse, guiding me? The thought tasted sour. I eased the drawer open, slipped the copper key beneath folded sweaters, then slid in beside him fully dressed, shoes and all. At 4:05, the radiator clanked and I jumped so hard the mattress springs sang. Marcus didn't stir. Either he was the world's heaviest sleeper, or he was faking it better than any actor I'd ever seen. I pictured his eyelids fluttering beneath closed lashes, pupils tracking every move I made. My skin crawled. I counted to 100, then slipped out again, grabbing the old city map we kept under the sink like contraband. Outside, the streets were slick from midnight rain, neon signs bleeding pink and green across puddles. I took side alleys to stay invisible. Coat collar up, hood pulled low. Every shadow seemed to stretch a hand toward me, and twice I spun around convinced I heard those same measured footsteps. But there was only wind rattling tin signs. My breath came in small white ghosts. The coordinates led me to the Hudson's edge, where the ferry dock sagged into black water like a tired animal. Chains clanked against iron pylons, gulls screamed overhead even in the dark, and the whole place stank of diesel and rot. I searched the pier with my phone's dying flashlight, sweeping boards warped like broken piano keys. Halfway down, something glinted, a fresh padlock hanging from a maintenance hatch, its face engraved with the same spiral I'd seen on the key. The teeth matched perfectly. I crouched, slid the copper key home, and felt it turn with the soft finality of a coffin lid. The hatch dropped open on silent hinges, exhaling a breath of damp concrete and something sharper. Ozone, like after lightning. I hesitated. Down there lay 15 years of questions, maybe answers, maybe nothing at all. My thumb hovered over the flashlight app when a vibration buzzed against my hip. Not the phone this time, but the key itself, trembling like a tuning fork. I climbed down one rung, two, heart slamming against bone. The air grew colder, thick enough to chew. Halfway, my phone screen lit up again. Unknown caller. Of course. I answered, pressed the speaker to my ear, and heard nothing but the same static. Then, layered beneath the hiss, a familiar rhythm, the exact cadence of my own breathing, echoing back at me from somewhere deep below. It wasn't Marcus pretending to sleep anymore. Someone or something was already down there, breathing with me. The line clicked off, leaving silence so complete my pulse thudded like drums in a cathedral. I descended the last step and touched ground, solid, uneven concrete slick with moss. Ahead, the tunnel curved out of sight, and at its edge lay a faint red glow, pulsing in time with my heart. I took one step toward it, then another, copper key burning in my pocket like a brand. Somewhere behind me, metal scraped metal, the hatch swinging shut. There was no going back now. The lock had reset itself. I walked forward, each footfall sending ripples through the red glow, and the air vibrated with a low hum that felt like words just below the threshold of hearing. At the bend, the tunnel opened into a round chamber littered with photographs, every single one of me, from childhood to tonight, printed on copper plates that reflected the crimson light like blood. In the center stood an old rotary phone, its cord cut, receiver dangling. It rang once, a sound that felt like a scream compressed into a bell. I reached for it, fingers shaking, knowing who would be on the other end. The receiver felt colder than the river. I lifted it to my ear and heard only one word, spoken in my own voice, thin and distant. Run, whisper. Before I could move, the hum rose to a roar. The copper plates lifted as if caught in a whirlwind, and I saw the shadow of a figure step out from behind the spiral carved into the far wall. It wasn't Marcus. It wasn't even human. I didn't stop running until the tunnel spat me out beneath a sky the color of wet slate. The air smelled like rust and lilacs, an impossible perfume for a place that should have reeked of mildew. My feet slid on damp gravel as I stumbled toward the coordinates Marcus had once whispered into my hair during a midnight argument. The abandoned terminal loomed ahead, its entrance yawning like a mouth that had forgotten how to speak. My phone buzzed, but when I lifted it, the screen was cracked, spiderwebbed from the drop I hadn't noticed. The signal bars blinked out one by one until the word searching pulsed like a dying heartbeat. I tucked it away, no help there. The only sound now was my own breath, ragged and loud, echoing off tiles that hadn't seen a commuter in decades. I told myself it was just dust in my throat, not fear. Each step down the stairwell rang like a dropped wrench. The deeper I went, the warmer it got. Not the comforting kind of warmth, but the cloying heat of something breathing just out of sight. A sign hung crooked at the landing. Level 2, northbound. Someone had scratched an extra word beneath it. Forever. I touched the letters, and my fingertip came away sticky, coppery, and I didn't want to know if it was paint. At the bottom, the platform stretched longer than any blueprint ever promised. The tracks had buckled upward in places, as if the earth itself had tried to fold the rails like origami. Moss glowed faintly under the emergency strips that never quite died. And there, halfway along, stood a ticket booth I swear hadn't existed on the city maps I'd memorized. Its glass was intact, unbroken, and behind it sat a woman in a mint green uniform, straight out of the 50s. She didn't blink, she didn't breathe, she just extended one gloved hand. In her palm lay a Polaroid, edges curled. I took it, because not taking it felt like refusing last rites. The image was glossy, fresh, impossible. Teenage Marcus, 15, maybe 16, stood ramrod straight in a cadet's uniform, cap tilted at regulation angle. Behind him, a flag rippled I'd never seen, black field, a spiral of 7 stars, and in the corner, a single crimson thread. The timestamp burned in white at the bottom, October 12th, 1989. I flipped the photo over, expecting a note. Instead, my own handwriting stared back, though I'd never written it. He lied about everything except the war. My throat closed. The woman in the booth still hadn't moved, but now her other hand lifted, index finger tapping the glass once, twice. Then she pointed down the platform toward the dark. I took a step. The floor tiles beneath me were warm, almost humming, like a subway train was coming that no schedule could predict. Halfway along, I heard it, footsteps matching mine, perfectly synchronized. I stopped. They stopped. I started. They started. It was funny until I realized the echo wasn't behind me, but beside me, just out of reach. I glanced at the Polaroid again, and the flag had changed. The stars now spelled a word, tiny and cruel. Forgotten. I nearly dropped the photo, but the paper clung to my skin like frostbite. The air grew thick, metallic, the way it does before a summer storm. I tasted ozone and pennies. Ahead, the rails dipped into a pool of absolute black, and rising from it was a sound, low, rhythmic, like a heartbeat amplified through the entire tunnel. My pulse synced with it without permission. I wanted to turn back, but the woman's finger had pointed here, and I'd already taken the token she offered. I reached the edge. The heartbeat paused. A single rail tie had been replaced by something else. Wood, but carved with the same spiral I'd seen on Marcus's chest the night he vanished. I knelt, brushed away the grime, and saw my own name burned into the grain. Evelyn. The letters were fresh, sap still weeping. I touched them, and the wood was warm, not from the tunnel's breath, but from a living heat beneath, as if the city itself had a pulse and it knew mine. Behind me, the woman coughed, not the polite kind, but the wet, rattling cough of someone drowning on dry land. I spun. The booth was empty. The glass now read something painted in condensation. Platform 9 is boarding. My knees buckled. I hadn't noticed the platform numbers before, but now I saw them. 8, 7, 6, each painted larger and fresher, counting down toward whatever waited in the dark. The heartbeat resumed, faster, urgent, and the rails began to sing. I stood at the edge of nothing, Polaroid clenched in my fist, the word forgotten, now pulsing in rhythm with the heartbeat. Somewhere down there, Marcus, or whatever wore his face, was waiting for me to choose. The tunnel inhaled. I exhaled, and that's when I noticed the handprint on the photo. Mine, but backwards, as if someone had pressed it from the other side. It was still wet. I stepped forward. I never stepped over the edge. The photo tugged back, like it was glued to the air itself, and that backwards handprint seared cold against my skin. My knees buckled. I found myself on the tunnel floor, Polaroid still pulsing, but the red glow was gone. In its place, silence so thick it felt like cotton in my ears. When I could breathe again, the station behind me had vanished. Only the album remained, lying open where I had dropped it during the chase through the terminal. Its leather cover was warped, edges singed, though no fire had touched it. I crawled toward it, heart hammering like it wanted out of my ribs. Page 1, our rehearsal dinner, looked normal, if you ignore the faces scratched out with something sharp. Page 2 was missing entirely. The binding threads dangled like little nooses. I flipped faster. Every third page was gone, torn out with surgical precision. Marcus laughing, gone. My mother straightening my veil, gone. The ring exchange, no, not gone, replaced by a blank sheet so white it hurt to look at. I pressed my thumb to the empty paper and felt a sting, like frostbite. My fingerprints stayed behind, black as soot. Back home, I laid the album on the kitchen table under the cold, fluorescent hum. Marcus wandered in wearing that same museum curator calm, the one he'd perfected since the reappearance. He poured coffee like nothing was wrong. I asked about the missing pages, voice steady only because I bit the inside of my cheek. He tilted his head, gentle, pitying. "Sweetheart," he said, "those pages were never printed. Budget cuts at the photographer, remember?" I almost believed him. The memory felt slippery, like trying to hold water. But water doesn't leave stitch scars in leather. That night, I dug through the junk drawer for the ultraviolet flashlight I used to chase scorpions when we lived in Arizona. Battery half dead, but it flickered alive. I closed the curtains, turned off every light, and bathed the album in purple glare. The empty pages glowed like moonstone. Then, beneath the single surviving photo of us cutting the cake, words appeared, written in neat, invisible ink. Memory Adjustment Batch 7, EC. My initials, my mind, my stolen hours. I staggered back. The flashlight slipped, clattered, rolled. The letters began to fade even as I stared, as if the paper was ashamed. I pressed my palm over them to keep them, but they soaked into my skin like lotion. A headache bloomed behind my eyes, sharp and metallic. Suddenly, I could taste copper and old pennies. I tasted the exact moment they took the memory of Marcus slipping the ring onto my finger, because it wasn't his hand. It was someone else's, colder, thinner, wearing latex. The ring had been too tight. They had to twist hard enough to bruise. I remembered the bruise now, yellow-green on my knuckle for weeks. But Marcus had never worn gloves in his life. I flipped to the last intact page. Another message, fainter. Return subject to baseline. Failures expected. Iterations ongoing. Beneath it a date, our 5-year anniversary. I counted back. That was the week I woke up convinced I'd dreamed my own wedding. The week Marcus started calling me Evelyn instead of Eve. The week the cat hissed at him like he was a stranger. Every anniversary since, he'd given me the same gift, a snow globe with a tiny couple inside who never quite faced each other. I lined them up on the mantel, 7 globes now, each colder than the last. I shook the oldest one tonight. Snow fell, but the figures inside stayed stubbornly back to back. By dawn, I had the album dismantled, pages soaking in the bathtub under blacklight. More fragments surfaced, coordinates, times, initials of other couples. I found a Polaroid tucked inside the binding, taken from behind me during the vows. In the photo, a technician in a lab coat holds a device to the base of my skull while Marcus smiles at the altar, eyes vacant, pupils blown wide. My own face is calm, too calm, mouth slightly open like I'm mid-sentence, but the sentence never ends. The technician's badge reads Lachesis. Same sigil, same thread, same everything. I pulled the Polaroid free, water dripping onto the tile like tears. The technician's eyes were black, not brown, not human. They looked directly at the camera now, directly at me, and I realized the photo is recent, taken last month. Same dress, same veil, same bruised knuckle. I have no memory of a second wedding. I have no memory of a second anything. The edges of the photo curl under the heat of the bathroom bulb, and the technician raises one finger to his lips. Shh. The ink on the album pages dissolves completely, leaving nothing but blank paper and the faint smell of antiseptic. I dress in the dark, jeans, boots, the flashlight clenched like a weapon. The snow globes rattle on the mantel, though no wind touches them. Inside each, the tiny couple has turned a fraction, now facing the same direction, toward the front door. Marcus's voice drifts from the bedroom, sleepy, ordinary. Ev, are you coming back to bed? I don't answer. I slip the empty album under my arm, the last Polaroid in my pocket. The hallway stretches longer than physics allows, but at the end, the door stands open to the night. As I step onto the porch, the air tastes of ozone and cut grass. Across the yard, a van idles, headlights off, side panel stenciled with the same sigil. The door slides open with a pneumatic hiss. Someone inside beckons. They're wearing latex gloves. I feel the bruise on my knuckle throb in time with my pulse. The album feels heavier than bone. I take one step forward, then another. Behind me, the house lights click off, one by one. The last thing I hear before the screen door slams is the soft clink of 7 snow globes hitting the floor at once. The van drops me at the mouth of an alley that smells of copper pennies and wet newspaper. My boots crunch on broken glass as the anonymous text glows again, one cold line, level 3, mirror side. I don't know who sent it. I stopped pretending to know anything hours ago. The Safehouse entrance is a rusted freight elevator that groans like an old man waking from a dream. When the gate rattles open, stale air rushes out, air that tastes of old aftershave and something sharper, like ozone left too long in a bottle. My pulse drums in my ears while the elevator lurches upward. Third floor. I step into a hallway so narrow my shoulders brush both sides. There's a camera in the ceiling corner, red light blinking like a dying heartbeat. It follows me, slow and mechanical, until I reach the door at the end. No handle. Just a palm scanner the color of dried blood. I hover my hand above it. Then, nothing happens. Then it chirps once, green, and the door sighs open. Someone knew I was coming. Inside, the room is painted matte black from floor to ceiling. The only light comes from a dozen one-way mirrors set into the walls, each reflecting a different slice of darkness. I can feel eyes behind them, but when I step closer, the glass stares back, only at me. My reflection looks thin, hunted, like a negative exposed one too many times. Then I see the shelves, row after row of leather-bound passports, identical except for color. I pull one at random. The photo inside is Marcus, younger, hair longer, eyes still the same startling green. But the name stamped beneath is Julian Mercer. Another says David Harker. A third, Leo Santangelo. He's had more birthdays than I ever knew. I keep counting. 27, 28, each face him, each name someone else. My fingers tremble so badly the edges slice tiny paper cuts across my knuckles. Drops bead like punctuation on the covers. At the back of the shelf, I find the one labeled Nathaniel Vale. The leather is buttery, almost warm. I flip it open and nearly drop it. There's my own face staring up, but the photo is grainy, taken from a distance with a long lens. My hair is shorter, sunlight catching the part I always forget to dye. Stamped beneath in faded crimson, wife, contingency 4. My stomach flips so hard I taste metal. I trace the letters with a shaking finger. Contingency 4. Not 1, not 2, 4. Like there were plans A through C before they settled on whatever nightmare this is. I tuck the passport inside my coat, close to my racing heart, the leather already stealing its warmth. Behind me, something clicks. Soft, deliberate. Footsteps on tile, too measured to be casual. I stop breathing. The mirrors don't show anyone, but the sound moves clockwise, skirting the edges of the room. I crouch, sliding more passports into my pockets until fabric bulges. Evidence, maybe. Or bait. Another click, closer now, followed by a low electronic hum that raises gooseflesh along my arms. The overhead bulb flickers, dims, then flares so bright I have to shield my eyes. The mirrors flash white, then black, then. For a single heartbeat, every mirror shows the same thing. Marcus, standing behind me, hand reaching for my shoulder. But when the light steadies, the room is empty. Just my own reflection staring back, pupils wide as coins. I spin, but only dust motes swirl in the cone of light. The humming grows louder, vibrating the floor beneath my boots. A timer, maybe, or a lockdown sequence. I back toward the door, clutching the passport tight. My name in his handwriting. No, his alias's handwriting burns like a brand. The door I came through is already sealed. Red light strips ignite along the ceiling, bathing the black room in pulsing crimson. I sprint to the far wall, palms slapping mirror after mirror, searching for a seam, a latch, anything. One gives a hollow thunk. It swings inward on silent hinges, revealing a staircase spiraling down into velvet darkness. I hesitate at the threshold. Somewhere below, water drips with the rhythm of a metronome set too slow. The air smells of wet concrete and lilacs, his cologne, 15 years buried in my memory. My grip tightens on the passport. I take the first step, then another. The mirror door swings shut behind me, and the darkness swallows every trace of light. Somewhere below, a phone rings once. It's the same ringtone he used to set for me. The ringtone cuts off as suddenly as it began, leaving only the sound of my own breathing in the stairwell. Each step down feels like I'm walking through layers of memory, peeling them away one by one. The passport in my hand seems to pulse with its own heartbeat, and I can't tell if it's fear or anticipation making my pulse race. Marcus is waiting at the bottom. I know it. The same way I know the sky is blue or that water is wet. It's a fact carved into my bones. When I finally reach the last step, a basement stretches before me that's somehow larger than the building above. The air here tastes of copper and old paper, like the archives of a forgotten library. And there he is, standing beneath a single hanging bulb that swings gently, despite the absence of wind. "You shouldn't have come," he says, but his voice cracks on the last word. "Evelyn, you need to leave, now." I step closer, and that's when I see it. Around his neck, a thin silver chain holds a small glass vial. Inside, something moves like smoke, but moves against gravity, spiraling upward in lazy circles. "What is that?" I ask, though part of me already knows the answer. "That's what they took from you, isn't it? From us." Marcus's hands shake as he reaches for me, then pulls back. "The Canary Protocol," he whispers, and the words taste like ash. "Any operative whose identity is questioned, whose loyalty wavers, they don't just erase the person, they erase everything and everyone the person loves." It's like you never existed to anyone who mattered. My laugh comes out brittle. "That's impossible. You can't just—" But even as I say it, I remember the empty photo frames at my apartment, the missing yearbooks. How my own mother looked at me with polite confusion when I called last month. "Look at your diploma," Marcus says, pointing to where my college degree hangs framed on the far wall. I hadn't noticed it before, but now I see the parchment is fading, letters dissolving like sugar in water. The ink runs downward in black tears, leaving behind nothing but empty paper. 23 hours and 47 minutes, he continues. That's how long you have before every trace of Evelyn Carter disappears from every database, every memory, every photograph. I stumble backward, bumping into one of the file cabinets. The drawers rattle ominously. "Lachesis has been planning this for 15 years, Marcus continues, moving closer. The vial around his neck pulses brighter. "They knew eventually you'd start asking questions about me. About what really happened that night." Clears throat. "Then why warn me?" My voice sounds small, like a child's. "Why not just let it happen?" His fingers brush mine, electric and familiar. "Because I'm supposed to be dead, Evelyn. They think they've already erased me from your timeline, but I remember. Every anniversary, every promise, every night you cried yourself to sleep, thinking I'd abandoned you." The file cabinet behind me clicks open. Inside, rows of manila folders labeled with names I recognize. My mother's, my best friends from college, even my old professors, all marked with red stamps reading, "Subject Canary." "These are all the people they're going to make forget you," Marcus explains. "Unless you run, right now. Change your name, your face, everything." But I can't move. My feet feel rooted to the concrete as surely as if it had already hardened around me. "What about you?" I ask. "What happens to you if I leave?" Marcus's smile is sad, beautiful, heartbreaking. "I've been a ghost for 15 years. What's another lifetime?" He reaches for the vial at his throat. "This holds the last piece of our marriage certificate. Once you leave this room, it'll vanish too. The last proof that we ever—" The basement door at the top of the stairs creaks open. Footsteps. Multiple sets. Marcus's eyes go wide with terror. "They found us. You need to go now. There's a passage behind the third file cabinet. Leads to the old subway tunnels." But I'm already reaching for the vial, my fingers closing around the warm glass. "Not without this. Not without you." The footsteps echo louder, closer. Marcus grabs my hand, the vial pressed between our palms like a prayer. "The tunnels lead to the river. Follow the green paint. Don't stop running until you reach." The first figure appears at the bottom of the stairs. It's me. Or rather, it's someone wearing my face like a mask, my exact expression, frozen in a smile that doesn't reach her eyes. She lifts something that glints metallic in the dim light. The vial in my hand suddenly burns ice cold. I ran until the green paint smears ended at a service elevator so old the brass buttons were rubbed down to bone. The stainless steel doors slid open with a reluctant groan, and inside stood my double, still wearing that porcelain smile. I shoved her aside, hit the 10th floor button hard enough to bruise my knuckle, and prayed the cables remembered how to stay in one piece. The car lurched upward like a drunk on a ladder, each floor a heartbeat louder than the last. My reflection in the warped metal panel looked older than it should, eyes ringed in sleepless purple, hair plastered to my forehead with river water. Identity nullifier. Floor 10. Server room. Real time. Deletion queued. The words rattled around my skull like loose bullets. I tasted metal, maybe fear, maybe the vial still melting against my palm. When the doors parted on 10, cold air poured out smelling of ozone and burnt plastic. Clear's throat. A narrow corridor stretched ahead, ceiling stripped to bare concrete, wires dangling like jungle vines. My guide, an ex-Lachesis engineer named Rook, stepped from a shadow so deep I hadn't noticed him. He looked like a man who had erased his own past, hair cut short enough to deny fingerprints, voice flat as wiped tape. "Clock says 4:31, he muttered. "Deletions run on Greenwich, no mercy." He flicked a keycard through a reader that answered with a chirp like a dying bird. We slipped past Cube Farms abandoned mid-keystroke, chairs still spinning, coffee steaming in cracked mugs. Half-written emails hovered on monitors, forever stuck between hello and goodbye. Rook's breathing was a metronome, counting down my life. 4:29. I clutched the vial tighter, feeling frost creep across my fingerprints. Somewhere behind us, a second set of footsteps started matching our pace. Soft, deliberate, the echo of my own stride played back half a beat late. "She's still following," Rook hissed, not looking back. I didn't need to ask who. The server room door loomed like a vault, matte black steel marked only by a single red diode pulsing in time with my pulse. Rook pressed his palm to a biometric panel that scanned the lifeline on his skin. The locks sighed apart, revealing rows of towers humming like beehives, neon coolant veins glowing electric blue. Cold hit my lungs so hard I coughed, tasting copper and static. At the far end, one rack stood taller, its screen flashing a countdown I could read from across the room. Deletion queued, 4:37. My name sat beneath the timer, like a gravestone waiting for the date. Rook pointed to a slim terminal jutting from the rack's heart. "Slot the vial there. Full turn clockwise. Pull the lever marked purge. You'll have 8 seconds before the array locks and starts the wipe." He said it like ordering coffee. I stepped forward, boots squeaking on anti-static tiles, the numbers ticking down with the patience of a guillotine. 3 steps in, the second footsteps arrived at the door. I didn't turn, but I felt her, my double, watching with those empty doll eyes. The vial trembled between my fingers, frost spreading to my wrist. 4:35. Rook muttered something about fail-safes, about maybe not coming back from this, but the words floated past like ghosts. I reached the terminal, slid the vial home, felt it click with the finality of a coffin lid. The lever waited, red and inviting. Behind me, the door sealed with a pneumatic kiss, locking us all inside the freezer of our own making. 4:33. My double's reflection appeared on the glossy monitor beside mine, her smile now cracked at the edges like old porcelain. She raised the silver device again, and I realized it wasn't a weapon. It was a remote, a kill switch for the whole floor. My hand hovered over the lever, 8 seconds of life between us and nothing, while the countdown whispered its last lullaby. 4:32. I yanked the lever down, felt the tower shudder like a wounded god, coolant spraying in silver arcs. The lights flickered, the countdown skipped, and for one impossible heartbeat, the numbers reversed, climbing back upward toward hope. Then every alarm in the tower screamed at once, and the double stepped forward, thumb poised over her remote, smile widening into something that knew how this would end before I did. The remote clicked, but nothing happened. My double's smile faltered, and in that fraction of a second, I saw the truth. She was as surprised as I was. The tower groaned around us, metal screaming like it remembered every secret ever poured into its circuits. I stumbled backward into the server aisle, coolant hissing across the floor in silver rivers that reflected strobing red light like blood on glass. "Elara," a voice crackled through the nearest speaker, and my heart stopped. Marcus. His voice was thinner than I remembered, stretched by digital distance and something else I couldn't name. Sniff. "I'm sorry. I never meant for you to see what I became." The double spun toward the sound, her perfect features contorting into something almost human, almost afraid. "You're broadcasting from inside the deletion queue," I whispered, realization hitting like ice water. "You're going to overwrite yourself to save me?" Static burst across every screen in the room, 1,000 Marcus faces fragmenting into digital snow. 15 years I've been a ghost in their machine, his voice continued, threading through the speakers like smoke. 15 years watching them use my name, my face, my memories as their perfect alibi. The double lunged for the nearest terminal, fingers flying across keys, but the screens refused to obey her commands. Somewhere in the tower's dying heart, Marcus was rewriting the code that made her real. "I used you as cover," he said, and I could hear the weight of those words crushing him across whatever remained of his voice. "Made you the grieving widow so they'd never look for the husband who never died. But I can fix this. I can make them forget Marcus ever existed, wipe every trace of me from their systems." The double's remote clattered to the floor, and she stared at her hands like they were already dissolving. "You'll be free, Elara. Free of the ghost marriage, free of the lie." The server tower shuddered again, deeper this time, like something massive was shifting in its foundations. Coolant pipes burst overhead, showering everything in freezing mist that turned the red emergency lights into bleeding halos. "They're coming." Marcus's voice grew urgent, threaded with static that sounded like digital tears. "Lachesis agents, 90 seconds to server room breach." I pressed my palm against the nearest server rack, feeling the rhythm of Marcus's code pulsing through metal and silicon like a dying heartbeat. "There has to be another way," I said, but we both knew there wasn't. The double staggered backward, her perfect features beginning to pixelate at the edges, like a photograph burning from the inside out. "Look at me," she whispered, voice cracking. "I'm just a mask they made you wear." The screens flickered one last time, resolving into a single image. Marcus, as I remembered him, 15 years younger, standing in our kitchen with flour in his hair and that crooked smile that could still stop my heart. "I love you," he said, and the words carried across digital space like a prayer. "I always have, even when I was just code pretending to breathe." Heavy boots echoed in the corridor outside, the sound of too many weapons being readied. The double met my eyes one final time, and in her dissolving face, I saw something I never expected. Gratitude. Then she was gone, pixels scattering like ash in digital wind. Every screen went black. Every alarm fell silent. The only sound was my breathing and the approaching storm of footsteps. But in that perfect darkness, something moved. Not the agents. Not yet. A new light appeared on the farthest screen, small and green and pulsing like a heartbeat. A single word in Marcus's handwriting. Hide. The green dot throbbed like a dying star, and I felt my knees buckle. Hide. Marcus was telling me to run, even now, when everything was already lost. But before I could move, the server room door burst open and half a dozen agents flooded in, weapons raised, goggles glowing an insect blue. The lead woman, tall, hair scraped into a knot so tight it looked painful, lowered her rifle just enough to show me the small black sphere in her gloved hand. She didn't speak at first. She simply tilted the sphere so I could see my own trembling reflection warped across its polished surface. Then her voice slid out, low and calm, the kind of calm that means someone has already decided who dies tonight. "Evelyn Ashcroft," she said. "You have 1 minute to decide." I tried to laugh, but it came out as a cough. "Decide what?" "Whether you want to remember the man you married, or whether you want him to remember you." The sphere pulsed once, and a soft chime echoed inside my skull, as though someone had struck a bell made of bone. The other agents formed a semicircle, rifles still up, but their eyes were on the screens behind me, on the last fading green pixel that spelled my husband's final word. The woman, Agent Lachesis, she said, like the fate who measures the thread, stepped closer. We can pull the thread, Mrs. Ashcroft. Snip it clean. Marcus becomes zero, never was. Or you take his place. Memory wiped, relocated, a ghost spouse who haunts a life that isn't hers. I tasted iron. I'd bitten through my lip without noticing. And Marcus? She gave a tiny, almost apologetic shrug. His code persists. A living ghost in the wire, conscious but unanchored, forever looking for a face he'll never recall. My stomach flipped. You're lying. She didn't blink. We don't lie, we optimize variables. Behind her, the servers hummed louder, as though the machines themselves were leaning in to listen. I backed up until the heat of a running blade server kissed my spine. Think, Evelyn, think. But every path I traced ended in the same black cul-de-sac. They needed one of us gone to close the experiment. The Canary Protocol, the 10th floor, all of it was just a wind-up for this single, sickening choice. You never planned to let him live, I whispered. His sacrifice was baked in from line 1. Agent Lachesis's mouth twitched, the closest thing to emotion I'd seen from any of them. Baked in, she agreed, but not inevitable until you choose. The sphere chimed again, 30 seconds now. I imagined Marcus floating bodiless through fiber optic veins, forever reaching for a name he couldn't pronounce. And I imagined myself waking up in some pastel suburb with a stranger's ring on my finger, every photograph of our life together replaced by stock smiles. Both fates tasted like ash. What happens if I refuse both? I asked, voice shaking. Lachesis tilted her head. Then we erase you both and file the data under educational loss. She said it like she was ordering coffee. Educational loss. 20 seconds. The green dot behind me dimmed, one pulse away from vanishing. I felt the room narrowing, walls sliding inward like a collapsing lung. Marcus had told me to hide, but there was nowhere left. I had one wild, stupid idea. If I could upload myself first, maybe I could pull him back with me. But I had no port, no time, no code, just desperation and a heartbeat syncopated with the countdown. 10 seconds. Lachesis extended the sphere like an offering. Last chance, Mrs. Ashcroft, your life or his echo. I lifted my hand, not to take it, but to reach past her, toward the nearest tower where that green heartbeat still flickered. My fingertips brushed warm metal, and something inside the machine responded, a soft, intimate click, as if Marcus had just leaned in to kiss my knuckles. Evelyn. Not through speakers, not through bone conduction, but inside my own mind, intimate as memory. I felt the threads of choice twisting around my wrists, pulling taut. 5 seconds. I could sever them, let the tapestry burn. Or I could weave myself into the pattern and hope the design still held room for 2 souls. I closed my eyes, felt the hum of the servers rise into a choir, and spoke the only words left, neither. The sphere fell from Lachesis's fingers and hit the floor with a sound like a dropped marble. For one impossible second, the alarm stayed silent. Then every screen in the room flared white, and I felt the cables behind me grow hot as living veins. Something was ripping open. Not the door, not the world, but the moment itself. I heard Lachesis' shout, felt hands grab my shoulders, but the green pulse inside the metal was louder. It swelled, doubled, tripled, until the entire room throbbed in sync with my heart. And just as the light became unbearable, a new word formed on every monitor, written in my own handwriting. The monitor screamed that same leaping word, my name, over and over, like a confession. And the light ate the room alive. I tasted copper on my tongue, felt the floor tilt. That was when I remembered the heel of my left shoe. 6 months earlier, in a safe house in Prague, a woman with violet eyes pressed a silver switch into the insole and whispered, "One step, and every circuit within 40 meters will forget itself." I laughed then. I wasn't laughing now. I slammed my heel against the tile. It sounded like a champagne cork, absurd and tiny. For half a heartbeat, nothing happened. Then the world coughed. Every server howled, lights flared ultraviolet, and the green cables went black, shriveling like burnt hair. The identity nullifier, the thing that had stolen Marcus's face from every camera and every memory, gave one last metallic whimper. I swear it sounded almost human. Alarms detonated overhead. Sprinklers hissed awake. Cold water mixing with smoke to form a sour fog that tasted of scorched plastic. Lachesis grabbed my wrist, her grip surprisingly gentle, and shouted something I didn't catch. I felt the heat of the dying machines blister the air. Somewhere behind us, a door buckled. Agents in mirrored helmets poured in, rifles up, lasers slicing the dark. I ducked low, hair plastered to my face, clutching the one thing I couldn't lose, the drive the size of a matchbook tucked inside my bra. Marcus's last backup, his only evidence he had ever existed at all. "Move," Lachesis barked. She shoved me toward a maintenance shaft hidden behind a false panel. I tumbled inside, knees barking against cold metal. For a moment, the world narrowed to the clang of my heartbeat in the duct. Then the panel slammed shut behind us, sealing us in darkness thick enough to chew. We crawled. Each scrape of my palms echoed like gunshots. I pictured the agents fanning out below, their scanners hunting for the drive's faint electromagnetic signature. Please don't find us. Halfway down the shaft, the drive vibrated. Once, twice, a soft, almost shy pulse, as though Marcus were trying to speak through plastic and wire. I pressed it to my lips. "I'm coming," I whispered into its tiny heartbeat. Lachesis glanced back, eyes shining cat-bright in the dark. "If we reach the freight elevator, we have 43 seconds before the lockdown seals the shaft." She said it like ordering coffee. 2 sugars, 43 seconds, no big deal. We dropped into the elevator cage like spies in an old film. The motor coughed, hesitated, then began grinding downward. My stomach floated. Floors blurred past, 27, 24, 19, each level a heartbeat closer to whatever came after. I checked the drive again. Its pulse was stronger now, warm against my skin. For the first time in 15 years, I felt Marcus's presence not as absence, but as weight, solid and impatient. Tears mixed with sprinkler water on my cheeks. I didn't wipe them away. 17, 16, 15. Then the lights snapped off. The elevator jerked to a violent halt. Total dark. Overhead, metal screamed. Someone was cutting through the roof. Lachesis flicked on a pen light. The beam caught the jagged edge of a plasma torch pushing down through steel like a hot knife through butter. Sparks rained. I smelled ozone. She handed me a pistol I didn't know she carried. "Hold them off," she said, voice flat as granite. "I need 30 seconds to hotwire the manual descent." 30 seconds. Eternity compressed into a heartbeat. The circle of fire finished its outline, and a boot smashed through. I fired. Once. Twice. The muzzle flash painted everything in strobe. Someone cried out. The boot withdrew. The drive pulsed harder, almost frantic. Hurry, hurry. Lachesis's fingers flew over wires. 28, 29. Got it! The elevator lurched downward again, faster than gravity. Cables squealing like dying birds. My stomach slammed into my ribs. We hit the sub-basement hard enough to rattle teeth. Doors jammed. Lachesis kicked them until they screamed open onto a corridor lit by a single flickering bulb. The air smelled of mold and diesel. At the far end waited an old freight door chained shut. Beyond that door, the tunnels. Beyond the tunnels, the river. Beyond the river, maybe freedom. Maybe Marcus. The drive was so hot now it nearly burned. I clutched it tighter. But just as we stepped forward, the bulb shattered. Darkness. A voice, soft as silk, drifted from the shadows ahead. "Evelyn," it crooned, using the voice Marcus had on our wedding day. My knees buckled. Lachesis raised her gun, scanning the dark. "It isn't home," she hissed. Yet the voice laughed, my husband's laugh, low and fond and impossible, and said, "Give me the drive. Give me myself." The chains on the door began to move, clinking like bones. What if it really is him? And that's when I realized the cliff wasn't behind us. It was right here, waiting, wearing his smile. The voice faded the moment Lachesis fired, but the bullet found only stone, ricocheting down the stairwell like a trapped spirit. I stumbled after her, clutching the drive to my chest, the one thing left of Marcus that wasn't a memory or a ghost. Dawn had begun to leak across the horizon, thin and cold, pushing us toward a chapel I hadn't known existed until the map on the drive itself showed me the way. My heart pounded like a fist against bone, yet beneath the fear I felt a tremor of hope, absurd and bright. Lachesis stayed outside, guarding the path we'd clawed through bramble and shale. 15 minutes, she warned, eyes flicking to the sky as if the sun itself might turn against us. After that, I burned the building. I didn't argue. The drive was hot enough to brand my palm, and the voice still echoed inside my skull, laughing the way Marcus had when he spun me at our reception. I stepped inside the chapel alone. The nave smelled of mildew and candle smoke, long gone cold. A single server tower, black and squat, waited beneath the altar like a mechanical pilgrim. I knelt, sliding the drive into its port with the reverence of communion. The screen woke without password or prompt, as though it had been expecting me all these years. A line of green text appeared, initiating archive Elias Vale. Whisper, Elias Vale. The name tasted like morning rain and absolution. I had chosen it from a Latin phrase carved above the lintel, Vale, meaning farewell, and Elias, meaning the Lord is my God. Together they sounded like someone who could survive anything. The transfer bar crawled across the screen. 5%, 10, each pixel a heartbeat I'd forgotten how to count. Behind it, hidden directories bloomed open like night flowers. There, our wedding video, labeled with yesterday's date. I clicked before I could stop myself. The screen flared to life, not grainy or glitching the way Lachesis had warned, but pristine. Marcus, Elias, stood at the altar in his borrowed suit, hair falling into his eyes exactly as it had the day I promised forever. He laughed. No static, no mimicry, just the warm, ridiculous bark that once made me drop an entire tray of champagne flutes. I covered my mouth to keep from sobbing out loud. 25%. The footage widened, revealing the whole chapel we'd rented in the woods outside Portland. My dress caught sunlight like spilled cream. His hand trembled as he slid the ring on. I watched myself mouth the words, "For as long as we both shall live," and felt the weight of every day since that had become a lie. Yet here was proof the lie had once been true. I reached toward the screen, but my fingers only met glass, cold and indifferent. 40%. New files unzipped. Medical scans. Biometric graphs. The ghost code Lachesis swore could never be anchored to a single identity. I watched birthmarks render pixel by pixel, felt the phantom warmth of his palm against my neck. Somewhere inside the machine, Marcus was becoming Elias, stripped of the threads Lachesis had woven through every government database. It felt like watching a man learn to breathe underwater and discovering he'd always belonged to the sea. 65%. A low hum rose. Not from the server, but from the air itself, as though memory had weight, and now pressed against the chapel walls. The laughter came again, no longer from the video, but from somewhere deeper, behind the screen, under the floorboards, inside my ribs. I spun around, half expecting to see him leaning in the doorway, but only dust moved in the slanted light. Still, the sound kept swelling, joyful, incredulous, alive. 79%. The monitor flickered, and for a single frame the faceless groom turned toward me, eyes bright with recognition. My pulse skittered. "Elias," I whispered. The laughter paused, as if surprised I'd found the right name. Then a new line of text, identity locked. Do not power down. The progress bar froze at 91. A metallic click echoed from the server, like a magazine sliding home. 93. The chapel bell, silent since before my birth, gave one rusty toll. I backed away, clutching the drive's empty shell. The screen flashed white, then black, then a single sentence pulsed in the center. Elias Vale is watching. My breath clouded in the sudden cold. Another click, louder this time, and the server's fan spun down to silence. I waited for the final ping, the 100% that would make him real. Instead, the lights died. The room swallowed itself. In the darkness, something moved, boot leather on stone, deliberate, calm. A hand, warm and unmistakably human, brushed my shoulder. You named me, a voice murmured, soft as the dawn now streaming crimson through broken glass. But did you ask what I became without you? The cliff opened beneath my feet, and I hadn't even stepped forward. The darkness peeled away like wet paper, and I was suddenly standing on the sidewalk, outside Café Lumière, the place where a ghost once asked me for sugar and stole my life. 1 year to the day since the servers fell silent, since the name Elias Vale blinked back into the world, and here I was, coat collar up, rain threatening, heart performing some frantic tango against my ribs. The bell above the door gave its familiar silver cough, and I stepped inside. I chose the same corner table where it all began, second from the window, close enough to watch the door, far enough to bolt if the past decided to bite. The waitress, new and oblivious, brought a cappuccino I hadn't ordered, its foam shaped like a heart that felt like mockery. I stared at it until the heart collapsed into a sighing circle, and that's when the air behind me shifted, carrying the scent of cedar and old electricity. You came. I didn't turn right away. Some instincts are carved deeper than fear. Instead, I took a slow sip, scalding my tongue on purpose so the pain would anchor me. Then I looked up, and there he was. Not the phantom flicker in server racks, not the glitch in government files, but a man in a charcoal coat with raindrops still clinging to his lashes. Elias, unmistakably him and legally nobody. The contradiction felt like a joke only we understood. His eyes held the same quiet mischief, but underneath it now ran a river of something older, something that had died and been reborn without permission. He slid into the chair as though the universe owed him this one small mercy. They gave me back the numbers, he said, tapping the side of his cup, but not the name. Apparently Evelyn Vale never existed, so neither could Elias. Bureaucratic poetry. His voice carried the faintest tremor, like a violin string still learning its own music. I reached across the table, hesitated, then let my fingertips rest against his. Warm, human, real. The cafe noises faded until only our breathing remained. Two storms learning to share a sky. Outside, thunder rolled like a distant apology. Inside, we spoke in half sentences and shared silences thicker than vows. He told me about the months spent hiding in plain sight, working under borrowed names, sleeping in rented rooms where the mirrors still argued about his reflection. I told him about the nights I stared at the dark monitor, waiting for the cursor to blink his initials, the way grief had learned to dress itself as patience. Neither of us mentioned the word marriage. That contract had dissolved the moment the world forgot him. But the choice? Oh, the choice remained, stronger than paper, louder than law. He nudged the sugar shaker between us, same chipped ceramic rooster from that first day. I can't offer you legality, he said, voice soft as the falling rain. But I can offer you Tuesdays, and Thursdays, and every dawn that finds us both still willing. The absurdity of it, scheduling eternity like dentist appointments, made us both laugh until the waitress glanced over, startled by joy that sounded suspiciously like breaking glass. Our cups were empty now, but neither of us moved. Somewhere in the background, the tinny radio muttered morning headlines. I caught only fragments: data breach, 10,000 restored, identities rising from digital graves. Elias tilted his head, listening. Sounds like the world's patching its own cracks, he murmured. Maybe there's room for us in the margins. Ugh! I thought of the paperwork I'd burned months ago, the wedding album I couldn't bear to delete, the quiet ceremony we might never repeat. None of it mattered. We were past the need for witnesses. He stood first, offered his hand. I took it, and the contact felt like signing something invisible yet unbreakable. We left the cups cooling, the rooster undisturbed, the past politely tipping its hat. Outside, the rain had softened to a mist that tasted of river and ozone. A newspaper lay abandoned on a nearby bench, its headline shouting in bold, black certainty. Elias paused, read it, then folded the paper and tucked it beneath his arm, like a secret already shared. We walked without destination, hands linked like conspirators, steps synchronizing, until even the sidewalk forgot we were separate people. Somewhere between the bridge and the park, he stopped beneath a street lamp that buzzed like a tired cicada. Names can vanish, he said, voice steady as bedrock, but what we choose every day, that survives. He kissed me then, soft and deliberate, the kind of kiss that maps new countries without asking for passports. When we parted, the world felt larger, as though the missing pieces had quietly returned and simply forgotten to announce themselves. We kept walking until the sun cleared the rooftops and the city began to wake. No rings, no certificates, no shared last name for the world to recognize. Just two people who had learned that love is not a document, but a daily resurrection. And somewhere behind us, the rooster still guarded an empty table. The radio kept whispering miracles, and the headline blurred into tomorrow's promise. 10,000 souls remembered, 2 more choosing to be found. Forever, it turns out, is simply the quiet decision to stay.